The next session, Mike and I are going to talk about self-service and automation, which is something that comes up in a lot of conversations that we have with customers. It's in part do more with less. It's in part giving more visibility to stakeholders within organizations. And so I'm going to flip over to. I was hoping to give a demonstration, a live demo. However, Bell Canada decided to, well, there's some interruptions to some internet service. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a few slides, going to show you some screenshots of some of the ways that we approach providing self-service capabilities to organizations. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Mike is going to do some hands-on demonstration of some of the automation features that we make available and show you some interfaces via PowerShell, and I think he might even touch on C# as well. And so when we talk about self-service in this context, it's really answering these types of questions. How is my application being monitored? How can I change what's being monitored? Why didn't I get an alert when such and such an event happened? How can I make changes to how notifications work? How can I add a user? How can I fill in the blank? I'm sure many of you have experienced this within groups within your organization. And so through our Select Operations portal, we're attempting to help organizations provide a level of self-service to give users, give stakeholders the ability to answer many of those questions. And so the portal is a web interface. It helps manage certain aspects of the lifecycle of management packs, and you'll see that in just a minute. It's a very, very simple setup to operate within your infrastructure. It runs as a Windows service, and it does leverage a lot of the technology that we built in MP Studio. So a lot of the libraries, a lot of the capabilities like roles and permissions, it leverages that from the MP Studio environment to deliver some of these self-service capabilities. And it also provides web console integration. So if you're running the SCOM web console, if you're making that available to users, this will simply add some additional features, additional options to that web console to users where you want to provide those capabilities. And so again, at this point was hoping to run over flip screens and go into a live demo. Instead, I'll just share with you some screenshots that I've captured in a previous demonstration of the Select Operations portal. And here we're going to log in as a member of the SQL team. So in this situation, we've got the SQL team is complaining about a lot of alerts being generated by the SQL management pack. We've rolled out a SQL team alias that they can use to log into the portal to be able to do certain things within the SCOM environment. After a member of that SQL team logs in, here's the view that they'll have within the portal. Basically have most, if not all, of the features of the portal are made available to this particular user. They would be in as probably an advanced user is the role that we would describe this. So you can see a set of management pack features, some notifications. Under the reports section, we're actually building that out and have a new MP wiki as well. So if that's something that is of interest, we'll follow up and we can show you that more in the days to come. And in this case, I'm going to click on the agent workflow. So a lot of alerts are being generated. I want to understand exactly what SCOM workflows are running on my SQL server so that I can take action to perhaps do some tuning, maybe change some thresholds, maybe disable certain alerts that are being generated. So I'm going to click on that agent workflow. I'm going to enter in the name of my SQL instance. Now, this report can take a minute or two to generate. And so in the meantime, I'll just flip over to MP Studio to show you how that user is defined. So we can see under the role of advanced user, I can see that SQL team individual or group is defined as an advanced user. Advanced user has certain permissions, but again, because of the number of other roles that we support, you can really define at a very fine level, a very detailed level, you can define that user experience. You can define what capabilities you want that user to have access to. If I drill down on that specific SQL team individual, I can see what specific management packs they have access to. So here it's showing they have a team folder called SQL team, and they also have access to a subset of all the sealed management packs. And you'll see in just a minute that that means they're only able to work with the SQL MPs. They're not able to work with any of the other management packs that are in use within SCOM. Flipping back to the portal, the workflow report has now been generated, so I can here I can see all the SCOM workflows running on the SQL server. What you see highlighted in blue are overrides that are in effect on that particular SCOM agent, and I can perhaps see some thresholds that are not properly set. Maybe see some rules or monitors that are enabled that are generating alerts, which I want to disable. There are a lot of options with this report to customize the view, to search for certain things, to be able to group by other aspects, and be able to find exactly what information is being looked for. In this case, I've identified some SQL monitors perhaps that need to be tweaked. So I'm going to go back to my edit option within the portal. Clicking on edit is going to show me the management packs I have the ability to edit within the portal. I'm going to select the SQL Server Monitoring Management Pack. Again, when I do that, it's going to open the MP up for editing. It's going to present it in a grid, which, as we all know, management packs contain a lot of information. SQL is, perhaps one of the bigger management packs made by Microsoft. The grid allows me to find the information I'm after. I can slice and dice. I can do some searching and filtering. I can find the monitor that I want to change. And then I can edit that monitor to create an override. Obviously, being a sealed management pack, we're going to create an override for that management pack. In this instance, perhaps I'm just changing a threshold or disabling the rule, and I'm going to save that management pack. Now, when I do that, all this work is being done offline. I'm not actually interacting with a live production SCOM instance. I'm making changes to management packs that live in the MP database. And because of that, MP Studio is going to notify the SCOM team to the fact that a change has been made. So in this case, it's showing us that a change has been made to that SQL override management pack. And then using MP Studio, I can drill down and find out exactly what was changed in the management pack. I can review that before it gets perhaps approved and then deployed into the production environment. So, we want to make sure that there is a workflow, an approval workflow for any work that's being done on management packs within the portal. Just some other features of the portal. It allows me to set my own notifications and addresses. So again, in this instance, I'm seeing the SQL team user being able to define their own addresses and their own notification methods and their own subscriptions as well. So I can define, in this case, an email address. I can define a schedule, which SCOM will use to be able to provide notifications to that email address. And I'll set up the necessary criteria for a subscription, so to make sure that that I'll get notified when a problem happens. And just the last thing to touch on is the new management pack authoring experience. I think Mike might have touched on that during his session, but it is yet another option available to you to author management packs using the portal interface. It does deliver a fragment-based authoring experience, so that in this instance, for example, I'm creating a new management pack. It's going to ask me, name, description, where in the MP database we want to keep that new management pack. It's going to ask what references to use. In this case, we're going to use SCOM 2022. And then right away, it's going to prompt me to add a fragment to the management pack. So the portal uses a fragment-based authoring experience. I'm going to select a fragment from this list. And when I do so, it's going to prompt me for the parameters for that fragment. And I'll fill in the appropriate parameters. I'll add the fragment to the management pack. And at that point, I can do some other work. I can add additional fragments to the management pack. I can edit any of the existing elements that have been added to the management pack, whether the monitors, rules, discoveries, I can add, delete, etc. So and again, doing so, any changes that are made in that MP database, we get notified in the MP Studio console, and ultimately have the ability to approve or not approve these changes, these management packs for deployment within production. So that's just a real quick look, overview of the Select Operations portal, again, designed to deliver self-service capabilities to stakeholders within your organization. Next, we want to talk a little bit about automation and most importantly, the REST API that lives within the that portal interface. And also today, I touched on this during the opening slides that we are today making available a resource kit, which provides a full set of documentation for that REST API, as well as a number of code samples to be able to make use of that REST API to help automate scenarios within your organization. Now, the portal does come with the Swagger UI can be used to really document the REST API. It'll show us a list of all of the interfaces that are available through the portal. The first thing you need to do when using Swagger is authenticate. So you use that authenticate call with the appropriate parameters to get a token. Once you've got that token, you can go ahead and run some of those other calls that are accessible through Swagger. And it's really a great way to become familiar with the API, to explore the various capabilities, to see the results, and ultimately to help you code a solution using that REST API. And just real quick, I'll mention Postman as well. It's another great tool to use for understanding the interfaces and to be able to help you code a solution for the specific scenario that you want to automate. And so at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Mike. Mike is going to show us some hands-on use of that API and the automation capabilities.
Thank you, Harold. So let's just share a screen here. What I wanted to mention first is that because it's REST API, you can basically call this from any language. We're going to be demonstrating PowerShell and C#, but you literally could call it from almost any environment. I'll bet you there's even a way to call it from Excel if you're really masochistic. The API is used by the Silac portal that you've already seen. And so all of these capabilities are available. And so anything you can do in the Silac portal, you can also do using the REST API stuff. So let's take a quick look. I had the portal running here, and I was going to briefly demonstrate Swagger, but you've already seen that. Well, actually, I will show that for one particular reason. Okay, so the various things here, and one of the ones I wanted to show was these. Yeah, where is it hiding? Not notifications. SCOM servers, get SCOM servers. Because we're going to demonstrate this one. And basically, all you need to do is do a GET request with that API, that URI, and the proper authentication, and it'll return the results. Now, I've not logged in here, so I'm not going to do that. But this is the first example we're going to show in PowerShell and also in C#. So we have to define a couple of things. We're going to define a server name and a port, and you'll notice that's this server name here and that port. It just matches up. Yours, of course, is going to be different. These are a couple of parameters we're going to use for the workflow report, which we may not get into. Then we define the base URI. So this is, HTTPS server name and port /API, because everything's going to be under there. We're going to ask for all our results in JSON. And we're only going to display the first 10 items. But that's for the demonstration only here. Now we need to get some credentials, and PowerShell has this lovely get credential command. So if we haven't already got them, then we get the credentials. Otherwise, if we run this a second time, it won't even ask us for the credentials again. Now, to get this authentication token, we have to use this account/authenticate method. We're going to use that using the invoke REST method commandlet from PowerShell. It's a post because we're sending results in there. We're going to do a basic authentication because we're going to pass in user ID and password. And we're going to specify our content type, the JSON again. And for the body, we're passing in we're going to convert this body variable. I'll come back to that in a second. We're going to convert that to JSON and pass that in as the body. The body is simply defined here as an object in PowerShell with a username property and a password property. We get the username from the credentials that we got from get credential, and we get the password. This is the plain text password here. And that's an important thing. That's why you always want to use HTTPS. Otherwise, people will see that or can see that on the network. So you want to make sure you're always using HTTPS. When we do this call, it returns a blob of JSON. And one of the things in that JSON is the auth token. And so we're going to pull that out. We're going to use that later. It also tells us how many seconds that token will expire in. And that's typically, I think, 7,200, which is 2 hours. So we can calculate when that will expire, and we probably want to refresh it before that time. For PowerShell, I'm typically using that with short running, run once, make some changes, run again sort of thing. So the auth token, just getting it each time is probably not an issue, and we don't need to worry about the expiry. For longer running things, I think C# is a better choice there, and we'll show how that's done. The authentication token that we got, that needs to be passed into the headers. Now, you remember up here in our headers, we said authentication equals basic. Now, for subsequent calls, we want to do it differently. We want our headers to be authorization is, and we put the word bearer and that token, and we'll just pass that in. So at this point, we can actually start making requests. So as you saw in Swagger, this V1 SCOM servers, and let me just check that's what we got here. API V1 SCOM servers API is going to always be there. We're going to do a get on that, and as you can see here, that's a get here, that lovely blue dot there. We're going to pass in the headers that we just kept. Oops, don't drag. This is the headers with the authorization here and our content type. We make that call, and we're going to get back something in the servers list. And invoke REST method automatically converts stuff back into PowerShell objects from JSON. And so we can simply do things like servers.count to find out how many servers there were. And then we can go through the servers. This is just UI here at this point. We're going to select only the first 10 in this case, and we're going to format those results. And I've played a couple of games here with formatting, but basically we take the name and we label that as alias because we will use that alias in other places, server for the SCOM server, and a username here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breakpoint on this line, and we're just going to execute this code. Now it's going to ask me for my information here. And we've hit the breakpoint. Now, the output here, here it's asking, this is just where it's asking for the credentials. Here's our results. So we're going to log the number of SCOM servers, which is 2. We have the alias, which is actually the management group name, the server that we're connecting to, and the username that's been used for authentication there. We have other things we can do here. The next thing we'll do is we'll get a list of store folders, and we want the sealed ones as well. It's exactly the same in all other respects. It's just a difference in the URI here, and we're going to return folders, and we format them as well. So let me put a breakpoint here. I think I stopped it, didn't I? Sorry. Get rid of that breakpoint. And we can run that now. And so here's our store folders, but we've limited it to 10. So there's our name and our store path. We can continue here. The next thing we'll do is we're going to get the audit history for the whole store for the last 90 days, which is going to return a lot of entries. Again, we're only going to produce the top 10. And then we're going to get the workflow from a running machine. And I want to talk about that one separately. So let's put the breakpoint there so we can continue. We'll get the audit history. So here's our audit history. There are 82 records. I guess I missed the fact that we're going to get management packs as well. So we got our list of management packs here. There's 944 of them. We only showed the top 10 because we don't need to be scrolling all day. Here's the audit history. And here we're stopped. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to run a workflow report. And we're only going to display the top 10 items. But we have something different we have to do here. The SCOM workflow command actually takes the SCOM alias. That's the name of your management group. And that's what we saw up here. This is that alias. And when we defined it up here, I think it was just set Ajax, didn't I? Yes, Ajax here, because I knew that's what it was. Obviously, you'd pick that from a list or something like that. So we take the existing headers that have the authentication. We're going to make a clone of it in this workflow headers variable. And we add this SCOM alias in, and then we can just invoke it. And so the syntax here for the URI is SCOM/workflow, and then the name of the workflow server that we want to get the workflow from, or I think you can use a comment separated list here. And in this case, we pass in the workflow headers, which has the authentication and the SCOM alias there. The rest of it is pretty similar. It just takes a second to run. Let's continue, isn't it? Well, I don't know quite what I did there. Let's just try running here. Run. So now it's gone out to the REST API. It's asking for that information, which goes to the management server, goes out to the particular agent. The agent gets all that data, formats it up in a big blob that it sends back to the management server, who will then return it to us. And here's our first 10 items. So for instance, we have a monitor for this element name. It's going to be, you know, this type of monitor, and it runs once a day, that sort of information. That's all available to you. We will be doing a lot more work on this, but it's certainly workable right now. I wanted to talk about the other case you can use is to do it in C#. So we'll have this set of samples for you as well. We have what I'm calling portal lib. It's basically just 3 files. Credentials just lets you get the credentials almost the same way that the PowerShell does it. REST API client, I didn't want to move it. REST API client is sort of some low-level code, and then the select portal client is sort of higher-level code that's more tailored to use with the portal. And I'm not even going to worry about why that's there. And then the final thing we have here is a program which actually invokes it. And you're going to recognize a lot of this. So we define a couple of constants for the server name and the portal. Those are exactly the same, just in C# syntax. By the way, anything you can do in PowerShell, you can do in C# and vice versa. It's just that the C# provides some advantages, and we'll talk about them. Here's our URI base. And we define a client object that we're going to fill in. That's what we're going to use for everything else. And again, we're using the same workflow information here, and we're going to limit our list to 10. We'll skip over this. This is for testing, and no, my password isn't secret ! We'll get the credentials, and then we create this client. We pass in the URI base and the credentials, and that creates that client. And then we run the tests. The tests do things like show SCOM servers. So I've got a separate function for that. That uses that client that we established. It does a get. Tells us that what we expect is a list of these SCOM server DTO objects to be returned. So this does the get to that URI added onto the base URI, gets the resultant JSON, deserializes it into this type, and returns that. And then we have a bunch of, so we have some error checking here. And then we do a lot of code here. All of this code is done to just reproduce what we could do in PowerShell in 2 lines. It looks the same. I just wanted to be able to confirm the two. The serialization here, we have defined a couple of DTOs, data transfer objects here. So this SCOM server DTO is just a C# class. We've got some comments here to get rid of some warnings, the namespace. This is the sort of JSON that was returned. Square brackets means an array. That's one object, comma for the next element in the array, and then just the various names and the values here. And I redacted everything. And there's instructions on how to create these, so you don't need to worry about it too much. And then that just works. And so I'm just going to run this thing without any breakpoints. It's going to ask me for my credentials here. And I will bring up this. So this is running the workflow now. And again, it takes a bit of time. But what we'll be able to do is bring the two of these side by side and show you that the results are basically identical. Let me go back up to, actually, I should just run this again without the breakpoints and get the output clean. Okay, let me just run that. So here's our output. It's finished. You'll recognize, monitor. There's that same monitor name because it's returning the same stuff, frequency, etc. If I go up to the top here, here's our SCOM alias, our SCOM servers. And let me, bit of resizing here, get these to line up so we can see the two together. The font is different, the size is different, but the net results are the same. So there's our SCOM servers. So, we've got a count of 2, max 10 shown, Ajax, Kempville, all that information. Folders, 54, max 10. Same information is shown there. Management packs. This didn't truncate where PowerShell truncates, but you see it's actually the same sort of information here. The audit records, again, it's wrapped instead of truncating, which PowerShell does. There's our audit records, and then finally our workflow records here, 337 max 10 shown, discovery, etc. So it can produce exactly the same results. As I mentioned, we have some more work to do there. We want to put some more examples in. So far, the examples are all how to get information. You'll want to be able to create and delete and update information, the whole CRUD operation. So we'll be working on that and pumping up the document for that in the next couple of days. It's coming along quite well. I think that's actually all I wanted to really say about this.